Yes. Good evening and welcome. Don't you love it when a plan comes together? Right, then here we go. Goes to a wide screen. So we're on chapter 2. I'm sure a lot of you have read it. Chapter 1, I do apologize. I keep looking. I've got Nick in my right-hand corner here, and she led me to chapter 2. Chapter 2, not yet. We're on chapter 1 because we're covering amnesia. Because last time out, we had that many problems getting in, logging on and everything. I thought it was very unfair to roll forwards. Everybody agree? What do you think? Yeah. Good. So we're, oh, shucks. Right then, I promise it won't be the same as last time anyway. It's all original. Any questions on amnesia? Right? I'll roll forwards, and if you have a question, you just chip in and shout it out. How about that? Yeah? Brilliant. So for me, I suppose Milton Erickson, you'll have heard me chat about Milton Erickson quite a bit. But for me, Erickson was the absolute #1 pioneer of this particular part of an intervention, if you would. So what he thought was, well, when a client comes in, and you've got to bear in mind, this is before they've got neuroscientists wiring up your brain to see what your thoughts are. And Erickson realized that when you come in for a session or appointment or whatever, the pattern of thought that's maintaining your problem was present. So at the end of the session, if he then gave you a thorough explanation, he realized that he was actually going to pop you back. I couldn't hear it first, but it was my settings. Click on the unmute, and there were options. Brilliant. There are options on the unmute, Martin. So thanks for that, Jeanette. So if you come in and you're wired to your problem, and I used to love it. I used to have a clinic in North Shields in Newcastle area. And it was about 1,000 meters from the car park to my office. And I could look from my window and I could look straight down at where people would park their cars. And I could watch them getting into their misery as they moved closer to the building. It was brilliant to watch. You saw these fit strong, and literally they'd forget their walking, and as they got closer, their walking stick, and they would be getting into their misery mode, to go and meet the therapist. And they'd come in, I'd just be laughing, and I'd explain to them what I'd just seen them doing. So this is taking us straight into Erickson again, because they would come and unburden themselves during the session. But then at the end of the session, if you give them an explanation, it allowed them to pack everything back up and wander out of your clinic, your session, with problems untapped. And that's why Erickson decided to scatter their minds to the four winds, so that after they did an intervention, they wouldn't have a clue, and quite often they wouldn't have a clue why on earth they'd even come. Now, I'm going to let you guys into a big secret. I didn't do it last time out, but, and I haven't shared this with Lisa yet, so I'm probably going to get into trouble, but here we go. During the 3-day program that we're doing, and a lot of you are coming, so that's okay, I'm going to drop you all into a trance without any of you noticing. Mm-hmm. It's a fun thing I used to do. Just a fun thing to do, right? Well, for me, obviously. But you lot won't know what I'm up to, which is even cooler, right? So that when you pop out of it, you'll just think close your eyes for an extraordinarily long blink. And you'll suddenly have a dying urge to use the toilet. That's the only clue you'll have. But luckily, there are a fair few toilets at the venue. Right? So I've checked. I've done all of my homework. I've checked it, so that when we drop you into that position, you'll not be aware of it. I've probably told you I used to do it a lot on my trainings. Now, before, like the body mind workers and stuff, where I used to do it a lot. But one of my pals was filming once, and I always wanted to catch it on film. And I remember this day he came to me and said, when are you going to do it? He said, because I really want to catch it. I said, well, what I'll do is when I nod my head at you like this, I'll be chatting, but I'll nod my head at you. When I nod my head like that, don't worry. I said, because they'll be gone, but I need you to back off out of the room and hum to yourself and keep a little hum going. He said, got you, got you, got you. So off we went. It's about 2 PM, right? That's not a clue. It was just the way it happened that day. It's about 2 PM. And I'm nodding like this, and he's just gone. So afterwards, we get home, right? And what were you doing? He says, well, you said you were going to tell me. But tell me, honestly. And when you do, I said, we did it. And I said, see that bit there when the camera just looking at nothing? I said, you were supposed to be filming that. And God, he says, but if, exactly. So that's what we're going to do, one of those, which would be a fun one, right? Because it's the start of a new year, and a lot of you are going to be coming, wanting some sort of change. So I thought, well, what better way than to drop you all into a nice group trance, yeah, shake it all up for you, and then wander back in. You'll feel once. Oh, I hope he shuts up because I need the toilet, right? And your bladder will be your signal. But the good news is you'll have forgotten that by then, because that's what Erickson would do. At the end of a session, one of the key signals he would use was you needing the toilet. Now, I've developed that further because if you think about an emotional memory image, when you go to sleep, it's a paper we've submitted, it's not published yet, but basically, when you go to sleep, the emotional memory image wants to integrate, wants to become information, yeah? It wants to integrate into you. But the problem is, as you're nodding off, the HPE axis was the stress system, yeah, that raises the alarm, which recalibrates, thus causing sleep apnea, which for a lot of people means you'll wake up 2 or 3 times a night to take a pee. Now, we did a piece of research with a group, and what we found was they used the sleep program, Mind Reset, shameless plug. They used the sleep program in Mind Reset, and they stopped getting up for a pee. The thing is, if you go chat to your doctor will tell you, oh, it's because of your age, your bladder gets weak. Your bladder does not get weak. What happens is, my hypothesis, the EMI comes to download. Your system, in order to wake you, during the day would be a sharp intake of breath. But when you're asleep, that isn't going to wake you. So the reverse happens. Your system shuts down your breath. In doing so, the pressure is increased in your entire body, which increases the urine intake into your bladder. Pop up, voila, you have to take more pees. But if it's clear, you get to sleep through it. Just a little tip there, just in case you're urinating a little too much. Yeah, myself did it. Wow, sleep straight through. Like I'm 12 again. Cannot wait. So just a thought. So give it a shot and give us a shout. Right. So why on earth would Erickson? It's funny, isn't it? We're on a different topic, but are we on the same topic? As he took me around the houses to bring me back to the junction where Erickson began. Because you'll find it becomes more difficult to keep up You see what I mean? Because you think, right, we're chatting ambiguity and what's the you know when you just it's gone again, but it'll come back at some point. So Erickson would do this constantly. Now, it could be the cause of frustration because you find yourself having to work harder to keep up with the conversation. You see what I mean? Because just like that bladder, there's more pressure. And the more pressure we build on a conversation, the more likely you are to drop out of consciousness into a subconscious position because it's easier. You see what I mean? And the more you see, right, the more you realize what's left. And that's when the challenge comes because there's so much more going on and interacting with that wonderful mind of yours, then you can actually shake a stick at. So that's what Erickson wanted to sort of impart with us. So number one, it separates the client from the state that they've entered in with. It's totally separated them. So now the engagement becomes an experience of its own. Now, if you ever read the little chap I worked with that had the stammer in The Saboteur Within, some of you would be nodding, yeah? In The Saboteur Within, I used the exact same technique because I realized very early on that come bedtime, your mind has to take together all of these pieces and make some sense out of it. So we're here, we're conscious at 7 in the evening, 8 in the evening, or 5 in the morning, depending on where you're on the planet. But this hour needs to be stored inside your mind. Now, how it's stored depends on the attention you're giving me and how I'm placing it. Now, you don't actually have that influence because it's your subconscious mind, and that remains in my hands, not yours. That's when it gets really exciting as a therapist, because if you're the speaker, then you get to influence all of this. Yeah, and then you can start cleaning it and polishing it and making a brighter future for everyone that's watching. So that's one of the challenges then that Erickson was looking at. So questions, any questions so far? So one of the ways was obviously to separate the client from their awakened misery state, if you would, or their dis-ease state. Make that separation so that when they left, they had no breadcrumbs with which to work their way back.
Can you give an example how he did that, like with a metaphor or?
Yeah, I'm doing my best to try and think of an example. I'll give you a very simple example, Timothy. There's Nick, you're smiling. It's as if you were watching something else. I don't know. So a lady came and she used to smoke. I never understand this. She used to smoke, but her husband didn't know. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a non-smoker. If a smoker has come within, 50 meters of this house, I know there's a smoker. You know what I mean? But I mean, it sort of gives you an insight into their marriage. You know what I mean? Oh, he doesn't know. Oh, well, what? So anyway, she would, as soon as he went out of the house, she'd grab a packet of cigarettes, that he didn't know. She'd run into the garden shed, the hut and the cabin and the garden, and she'd smoke. And then back in the house, happy days. So she'd been doing this for like 20 odd years. And luckily he didn't know. Anyway, she came back for a second session. And what she said was, well, I'm not sure what goes on. She said, because I've got this strange habit. I said, tell me. She said, well, every time my husband goes out, I go into the cabin for no apparent reason. So I'd switched off the hypnotized part, but the habit was still running. So that's when it gets fascinating. That's when you know you've done a really good job, right? Because what I noticed was some people would stop smoking on their own. So, oh, I've stopped smoking. Oh, I didn't need a hypnotist. But I'm 400 tons overweight. Why? Well, you stopped smoking. No, you didn't stop the habit. So your hand just keeps shoveling things in your mouth and you're not aware of it. So the trance hasn't been broken. That's why you need to pay a hypnotist. Is this helping you, Timothy? Because some NLP guys are, they're taught NLP, but I'm a hypnotist first, NLP second. So can you see what I mean? So there's a huge difference if you ask a hypnotherapist. There's a tiny difference if you ask an NLPer. But so different sides of the fence. But the simplicity in separating the habit from the trance. And that's when it gets really cool. So if we think about it for a moment, we look at the saboteur within. You think the little guy with the stammer, yeah? I'm sure I do give an explanation in the book, but I'll explain it very quickly. So he's got a stammer. So when the head teacher goes to fetch this little guy to me, I jumped into the head teacher's seat. I never told the head teacher. So when the head teacher comes back, he's got the little guy with him. Now, the head teacher is about 6'6". I mean, he's like 2 meters or something. He's a tall guy. And he's got this little 6-7-year-old with him. Now, teachers are fairly important when you're a kid. Yeah, they have an authority. But a head teacher has more authority again. Make sense? As a child. So if I'm in the head teacher's seat, who am I? I'm the head's head. So I'm God. You see what I mean? So the head teacher is like, right? So I direct him to take a seat. And then I went to the little guy, said, just come here. And he's like, now he hasn't spoken. And then I said to him, I was watching The Simpsons the other day. You know The Simpsons? Back then, The Simpsons was a big TV show and we all loved it. And he nods. And I said, there was a really nodding part. I said, when the microphone isn't right, so Bart's mouth...
Yeah, I'm going to.
Bart's mic was moving. Bart's mouth was moving, but Homer's words were coming. You know what I mean? And the guy said, I said, it's really frustrating. And he nods. And I said, so you wait until somebody stops the whole movie and realigns everything. And then it's fun again. And he's like, yeah. I said, now go back to your classroom. Well done. The kid's like, now this guy hasn't spoken to me. Think about it. If he hasn't spoken to me, he has not been able to identify or give me his identity as I have a stammer. I am a child who stammers. So I prevented him from sending me his message. Now I've dismissed him. Now I know bedtime's going to come. Even at 6, 7 years old, it's the same mind as ours. When bedtime comes, his mind has to package the experience. Yeah? He has to take the experience of a voice not running properly, pause, recalibrate, and begin again. Fun. Now, what does sleep do? It pauses so that when he wakes up, it's recalibrated. I know it's a bit easy when you know how, but does that make sense? So that's what I'm planning on doing for a group. So I'm kind of excited. I thought we'll do that. That'll be fun, right? So did that make sense? Did you catch that one, Timothy? So the key is really don't listen to your client too much. I found being deaf was really, really helpful. Yeah, because you start listening to them, and before long, you might actually start believing what they're saying. Yeah. And I think the biggest problem is they believe what they're telling themselves too. Now, if they would just stop and then begin something new. Now, when you meet someone for the first time, and so you generally never met them before, you now have a chance to begin your entire life again. At the moment of saying hello, you get the opportunity to be whoever you want to be. Because they ask you, who are you? Now, it sounds like a silly little statement, doesn't it? Oh, who are you? What do you do? But you have the opportunity to begin a whole new chapter. And the problem is we wake up every morning and forget. There's a whole new story. And as we'll find out in chapter 2, a never-ending story. Nick just grins, right? Because we're going to look at the nothing. But for now, we'll continue looking at something. Because when a client is unconscious, or rather non-conscious of what you're doing, now, like in a even a one-to-one, people say, "Oh, that's all right for you, Matt, because you're doing it in front of a group." But even if I'm with a client, and I'll demonstrate some of this for you guys that come on, even if I'm with a client, I'd just step up. That's how chatting to myself. I'd walk to a window. Now, the word for a window in England is window pane. Yeah, a window pane. So they'll come. And I wouldn't turn I'd say, come in. And they come, and I wouldn't acknowledge them yet. Because if they were coming because they needed pain treatment, I wouldn't acknowledge them yet. And I'd just be looking out of the window. And then I'd just touch the glass. It's amazing looking through pain. Anyway, how can I help? Now, most of my session was already done, but they didn't see it coming. But their mind already caught what I was doing.
So you surprised them.
Well, oftentimes, most of the work I do is absolutely outside of your awareness. I'm doing it during setup. When you think I'm busy settling in on how are you doing, yeah, you're not, now I'm ready for the session I've paid for. Oops, you missed it. And that's the best. If I slide in then, I spend the next 50 minutes, blah, 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 filling it in with fluff because the session already took place, but it took place when you weren't looking. And that's the beauty of amnesia. And a lot of people forget to put amnesia in the session. Now, I cannot encourage you enough, you practice amnesia. And if you look at Ericksonian ambiguities, there's so many, ambiguities that will allow you just to step off a sentence, yeah, and then wander down a different route or a different path or a different way, because there's so many, ways of doing it. And I suppose it's the it when it comes to doing, because the more you notice it, the harder it becomes not to do it. You know what I mean? Because you find yourself wandering down those pathways again, and Nick smiles because she felt it coming, but she's not actually sure what's coming because there could have been more of it. That's right. And that's a wonderful, Martin. Oh, that's exactly the signal I was looking for. But the problem is when you're watching, you're thinking, oh, am I actually listening? Am I present or not? So I suppose amnesia is, you've probably noticed it's a fun thing and I love getting on with it. So speaking of getting on with it, when you're subconscious, there is no resistance. So this is kind of cool also if you're working with a resistant client. I've had a wonderful email. Andrew Zarenko remind me to chat to you about it. I had a wonderful email from a would-be client. We never know. But the email goes along the lines of, this is on behalf of my husband, who's very open-minded, but he's very resistant to trance and hypnosis. And he suffers a lot with stress and anxiety. So my response goes along the lines of, dear madam, your husband is living in a paradox. Because you can't be open-minded and resistant to hypnosis. I said, everything about your message tells me he's very close-minded and very resistant, which also would suggest that he might have an emotional memory image sitting right there. So the first signs of relaxing the emotional memory image attempts to information. Yeah. So as they're going into relaxation, it's getting scarier for them. So they're more alert. That makes sense? So that's why if you use ambiguities to get them off guard, and then you use amnesia and deepen it, you can clear this without them noticing. Make sense? Another key point is it prevents over-analysis. Because the client turns out, I mean, usually I've got a list. Oh, you brought a list. This will be interesting. I'm smiling because some of you know it was you, right? And so you've got your list. Your list it makes me chuckle because your list was made up by your presenting problem. And it's designed to keep me talking about your list when we should really be sorting your problem. Oh, my list is designed by the same system that's keeping me held in my problem. Why didn't I think of that? Well, you probably did. But guess what? The part of you that was having the thought is also the part of you that's running the problem. That's how you get stuck. Liking it so far? So, facilitating change with no conscious effort. Sorry about that, Jen, double it. That's another reason why we do it, right? Because if we're doing it correctly, you find there's a yawn coming and you don't want it to come. And that's the worst one. That's correct. You're right, because the problem's never the problem, is it? And it's that yawn that's infectious. That's right. And the more you attempt to hold it down, the more it's like, and it comes up. Why? Because that's what a yawn does. But actually what it's doing is what you didn't want it to do, because it's coming up to say, I'm listening, Matt. But I don't want to be taught out listening. Oh. Does that make sense? Gosh. So it's allowing you to create change without people noticing. Yeah. It's allowing you to bypass conscious resistance. but it also protects your client. And this was, I think, the question Nick threw at me the other week. Then I thought, keep a hold of it. I can't remember the question, but it's somewhere in here, which is protecting the client's ego. Remember we chat about playing the game of not playing the game? Yeah. If you call the client out, Nick, your client had said something and it had the word anger involved, and you smiled at your client and said, where does anger come in? Correct? Something like that. And then you had a good session, but your client never comes back again. Yeah. Wonderful. Everybody nodding. You might have had that happen with you with a client. Well, this is why you'd use amnesia, because if you catch them out in a session, and we follow Ronnie Lang's work, yeah, Ronnie Lang said, if I tell them that I can see what they're doing, then I will be punished. Hence, the client doesn't rebook. That's your punishment. That's your punishment for saying out loud what the problem was. So if you use amnesia, it protects the client's ego, and it allows you to unhook the problem and leave no fingerprints. But if you call the client out, then there's a problem. So keep their system where you want it, like your best buddy. Unless, of course, you want, there's ways of getting around it, where you can actually use the client's ego against the client, which is it's another chunk of something, but that's a fun one. But very basic, get around the ego by not naming the problem. Yeah, keep it very simple. And then creating a sense of mystery and openness. If you create that, what you're doing is, on a subconscious level, on a neurological level, we're actually creating dopamine. Now, I'm going to explain it in the way I've done it in split-second unlearning, right? Again, everything I've done is behaviorally connected, and all of you will be able to follow this very simply. So when you're a young child, maybe 18 months, 2 years old, that's why we call them terrible twos, Jen, right? Because at 2, the reason they're terrible isn't because they're sticking.
You've just eaten her food.
The reason they're terrible twos is because they'll stick their fingers in everything. Everything goes in them. They're just so terrible if you're a parent, like, oh, yeah. But the beauty comes that just before you yelled at them for eating a spider, or you installed the spider phobia or whatever, just before that happened, their mind was full of dopamine and they were reaching out. Wow. They were curious. At the moment you went, dopamine shuts down, a rush of cortisol and adrenaline, and they're in panic mode. Now, you're there, you're the caregiver, so they know they're safe. Their system scans everything in the environment for danger. The only new thing is this, whatever it is, spider, hamster, guinea pig, grandmother, call it what you would, but whatever it is now the trauma. And if that remains, what happens is whenever they come into an environment that has a similar trigger point, the dopamine shuts down and the cortisol increases. So this is another key reason why we'd use amnesia, because amnesia is doing exactly what I was aiming for. Now, if you were to notice yourself right now, you'll notice my pitch, my tone has changed. I'm sort of getting closer to the camera here. You're leaning a little and your ears are pricking up and you are getting curious. You see what I mean? Now, what we've done is we've increased the dopamine receptors. Wow. Now, how cool is that? That dopamine is now boom, 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 Now, if we then were to have a wander with you, knock a bit of dust off, because, if you've been sitting, it's like, I went to put different story, I'll get back to it, but I went to go out with a buddy of mine last night, and I thought, I've got a pair of Lokes, men in the room, Lokes are a man's shoe, right? But special sort of shoe, haven't worn them in ages. I pulled them out the cupboard, went to put them on, and guess what? They're leather shoes, been sitting in the back of the cupboard. They're hairy. I had hairy brown shoes, couldn't believe it. And I couldn't put them on, could I? So, hairy pair of shoes before walking out the door? Think not. So, I bunked it. Lisa doesn't know yet. She'll have a cat. But I'll have to dust them off tomorrow when I get a chance. But because they've been sitting stagnant, and all I need is polishing. I didn't have time to polish them. But, if you polish them up, bit of polish on, bit of wax on, good as new. But otherwise, you'd be looking and thinking, well, hang on, those shoes are moldy, but they're not. They just need polished. That was it. That's all it needs. But if you went to a good cobbler, they'd tell you that. But if you went to a GP, they'd tell you had an allergy. Ba-bum. Customizing the therapy. Now, that's a fun part, because in case you hadn't noticed, what I'm kind of able to do is wander onto the map of any client. As Dan says, I've had every job bar Prime Minister. The reason being, it gives me a very flexible map. So if you're going to use Amnesia, you have to have the ability to shrink so small that your client doesn't feel vulnerable at all, so that you can step in there and you can open it up and clear it. And oftentimes, just a bit like brushing a pair of shoes, you're just literally allowing it to clear. And quite often, it's just letting enough light in so that you can notice it. And one of the, I suppose, the biggest pieces that he noticed was that if you had done all of that, then you get to the end of it. Well done, a glass of water probably help. Because you get to the end of it, then you'd wonder, well, what wasn't it that actually Matt hadn't spoke of earlier? Because you'll notice now that we've come out of that position, Masita's busy choking, you've come out of that position and you're thinking, well, he's still talking, but what's he actually talking about? Can you see what I mean? And before you know it, you're like, hang on, I know it, right? You just check the clock. You know the time's there. The time's going by. But what was it that I was just talking about just before Masita coughed? Remember? It just tipped off the tongue. So, any questions so far? It's kind of cool, because when you get that's right, Jeanette, because when you get to that part, it's like, I know I had a question. What wasn't it? No, I'm having a chuckle at Susan, because she's just chuckling away there. Right? Because she's like, you bugger, you've moved, and what was he talking about? It must have been something, because it's Wednesday night. I have 1,000 other things I could have been doing. I'm right here. I want to learn this stuff. And what the heck is he talking about? And the funny thing is, this evening will be recorded, so you can watch it again on YouTube. And maybe when you wander past the point where you thought you weren't, and then you think, but was I? Or was it the point before? And then you'll find yourself at this end again. And then you think, hang on, I'll watch it again, because definitely I was conscious up and then you'll just chill. Kind of cool. So that is why chapter 1 is so important. Chapter 1. Right, what's the time? Right, 22. Plenty out. That's it. Good plug, Susan. Thank you. You can come back again. Right then. Any questions so far?
I have a question because I read chapter 4 for today.
Oh, chapter
the-
4.
Yes, I did chapter
Oh,
4.
well done. Right. I'm not going to answer much on chapter 4 today, but go on.
Okay. Well, there was this sentence at page 201. Keep in mind, however, over the medium to long term, your mental and physical health is heading to a total psychophysiological entropy. So it's about the ACEs, and the studies have of up to 20 years compared to some without ACEs. So it's what was in your youngest years, is that you get a loss of energy when you keep the things with you you don't need or they bother you from when you were a child, like anxiety.
I've written, Gabby. I'm gonna ping you to see if you're coming over, because by the way, I have to tell you, we've got 24 hours left. It's for the early bird offer ends tomorrow night.
Okay.
So the good news is we're full, right? But I was just like, wow, well done. But the exciting news is that we went to the venue today. They've got a bigger room within the same venue. So I'm like, ooh.
How many people are there, Matt? How many people?
Where we? If I can just look at your lips, Martin. Yeah.
Yes. Hi. How many people are there at?
We've got 20 of actually all in paid done.
20.
20 in, and we've got others who are sort of haven't paid yet, but they've all confirmed. So that's exciting, but we haven't counted them yet. So that's the fun part. So we're looking at the same venue, just a bigger room in the venue. So that's exciting. Now, Gabby, back to my most important. Well, no, it's all important, but I've written a paper on it. I can't share too much because it's not published till the new year, but I'll touch on entropy for you, right?
Yes.
Now, when you think about entropy, the studies have told us that, and if you think of entropy as the amount of energy left to do the job, yeah,
okay,
very simple. The amount of energy left to do something, yeah. Now, children and wild animals have high entropy. You know, I've talked it's in the training. They've got high entropy.
Yes.
Children and wild animals.
I write down.
Remember? Now you watch my hand movement. You remember when I was doing it.
Yes.
Now, adults and domesticated animals have low entropy. Interesting.
How come?
Got it down to one word. Tamed.
Tamed. I have asked my husband what it means. What is tamed, Jules? Tamed. Oh, you're not free.
Tamed.
You're like the dog.
Like a dog.
What do you want me to do? Like that.
Tamed.
Yes, tamed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm going to share with you. Peggy Marie are these chats or something? I'm going to share with you guys my screen so that you can see what we're talking about. All right, then. So here's Ronnie Lang's knots. Yeah. Can you see the full screen here? Yeah. So ask yourself this. This is Ronnie Lang. He Scottish psychiatrist, and he studies schizophrenia. Yeah, like no one studies. He was excellent. And what you find is people, especially nowadays, people who they want to buy something. You know, they go shopping. They have a house full of just things. Yeah. And if you look up a guy called Fromm, yeah, he's a psychologists are from. If you look up some of Fromm's work, you'll find Fromm discussed, and we're going to get into this in the 3D event, because Fromm looked at the influence that the global movement had to create consumerism or materialism. And Fromm said there would be huge problems with humanity if we move from a society of being to having, of being to having. And I'm sure if you think about it, you can start to digest that. What he was saying was the human being, our life, is about solving our own personal riddle. You know, who am I? What am I doing here? It's really about the self and that journey. He said, but if we tamper with the societal structure so that we get, you know, the TV, etc., and we influence the generations to become consumers, then their only role will be to consume, will be to, I am nothing unless I have. So it would drive consumer behavior so that you'll just work and spend and work and spend, but you'll feel empty, lonely, and suicide would be a blessing. You see what I mean? Now this is all factual, so you know, but so that's from so we'll look at Lang's piece in the same position. What you find is people will buy something. What's the noise? People will buy something, but once they've bought it, they didn't want it. Why? Because if I have it, then it mustn't be any good, because I never get anything that's any good. Everything I get is useless. So the moment I get it, it can't be that good because I couldn't have got it otherwise. So can you see where they end up in this loop? So then, this is a beautiful one. I'll go through it for you. There is something I don't know that I'm supposed to know. I don't know what it is. I don't know. And yet, I'm supposed to know. And I feel I look stupid. If I see them both, but if I seem both not to know it and not know what it is, I don't know. Therefore, I pretend I know it. This is nerve-wracking. Since I don't know what I must pretend to know, therefore, I pretend to know everything. Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, I know him. I've been there. Oh, yeah, I know. I feel you know what I'm supposed to know. But you can't tell me what it is, because you don't know that I don't know what it is. You may know what I don't know, but not that I don't know it. And I can't tell you. So you will have to tell me everything. Yeah? Now, if you practice those sort of poems, they're very, very good at creating ambiguity and amnesia, because they're the structure of schizophrenia. And more often than not, that's what your client's presenting with. They're in multiple minds, but they're attempting a journey back home, back to themselves. And on that journey, If you call them out, here's what Lang would suggest. They're playing a game. They're playing a game of not playing a game. But if I show them that I see what they're doing, I shall break the rules and they'll punish me. So I must play their game of not seeing. I see the game. Now, if you look around your governments around the world, wherever you are, you can see what's happening. All the scientists, all the people who were purchased, all of them, zip, attempting to keep quiet in case they're punished. Just a thought. And 8 minutes to go, this is now published and it will be available in the next couple of weeks. So I've actually put the entire process here for you, and it's in a publication so you can download it online, etc. But I put the process here. So the inducer, or the no rules for me, my rules for you, the Napoleon here. And they impose a rule on you as a child. But as a child, you can't fight. You might try for a little while, but you're physically too small. And where are you going to run to? So your primitive system opts for freeze. So now you're held in a freeze response. And whenever you enter a context that's in any way similar to the original context, your system will drop you back into the freeze response. And you will comply or die. That's why I say fuzzy logic. Yeah. And that's what we've noticed in the last few years. The TV set produced many, many emotional memory images. Every government had one of these at the top, demanding ridiculousness of us all. You know, put a mask on to walk in, take a mask off so long as you're sitting, because a virus only operates above 3'6". They're never in creation. Does that make sense? But what happened? People complied. And why did they comply? They complied because the TV set, the media, were in front of us 24/7. And they separated us. So there was just them and each individual. They stopped us seeing our families, our loved ones. They kept us locked so that they could make our mind more pliable, which led to perceived threat, which increases the freeze response, and psychophysiological dis-ease. Now, the damning part there is all of those stress hormones, that inflammation, it all shuts down the immune system. So that dis-ease becomes huge. So a normal cold can become a killer virus. Why? Because you've been terrified out of your life and your system, and immunosuppressants are active. And in this particular paper, we're looking at chronic pain and why it becomes persistent. So we will be able to share that paper with you, the link to it in another couple of weeks. So we've just got to do the editing piece tomorrow and off it goes. So that's good. Any questions? 5 minutes left. Nick, the man that wasn't angry came, what did you say? The man that wasn't angry came for long COVID. Tee-hee. You couldn't make this up, could you? You couldn't make it up. Right. Any questions? 4 minutes left. Gabby's quick. She's checking. She's on chapter 9 now. By the way, next week, we are not here. right? For
Yeah.
one reason only. We're in Cape Verde.
Doe maar.
But because it's
Great
sunny.
for you.
Yeah, we've got 1 week in Cape Verde, and we're just obviously, it's going to be sunny, etc. Plus, it's going to be we're not sure of the internet. Yeah, and obviously,
course.
even if there was decent internet, I might be compass mentis. Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
we'll be back the week after with chapter 2. Is that okay, Gabby? Your question, please.
Yes. Well, I was at chapter 4, but so funny. It was about this is where I have met many individuals over the years, dehypnotized them and broke them in trance that they learned. Unlearning can genuinely take a split second, but I'm still learning. How is the split second? That's where you enter the confusion of not letting somebody tell the problem.
I'll make it very easy. Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody will tell you, it took me 10 years to come up with it. Yeah. Took me 20 years to decide to quit, to leave or to whatever. Make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Then you point out to them, it did not take 20 years. It took the last straw.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It didn't take tons and tons. It took a feather on the tons. Just that last, that's right, Susan. That's just that last piece. It didn't take, it took 20. It doesn't take 20. It takes that.
The split second. The moment that you decide. That's
the moment of decision is bam.
Okay.
That's why the word decision is so important. Because in order to decide, you must
cut.
It's a separation. And that's why it's so important. Does that make sense? Now,
Yes.
Susan, of course it makes sense. Now you tell me.
Of course. Thank you.
But if you ever get a chance over the holidays to watch Aladdin 2, there was a Walt Disney where Aladdin was blue, yeah? And it had Robin Williams in as the voice of Aladdin. But what I loved about that particular Aladdin movie was all the way through, the promise a genie makes is a genie cannot make somebody fall in love and a genie cannot take somebody's life. Yeah, they're the rules. And he can't give you more wishes than you can, whatever. But like the rules.
Yes.
All the way through, Aladdin nearly dies, or this guy. And every time Genie saves him and says, oh, he says, I nearly died. He says, yeah, but you'd be surprised what you can live through. And that's the key to life. Even when you think you're in death, you'd be surprised at what you can live through. Human beings are amazing creatures. All you got to do is take away this, give them a clear day, and have them realize that, oh, I am the driver. And that's the beauty of it. Even on a really dark, cloudy morning, it's visualize that above that cloud, the sun is in the sky. No matter what the weatherman says,
there is the sun.
Is in the sky. As long as you keep remembering to let that sunshine in, it's easier to rise and shine. Yeah. So if you go find the sun, be it, and bring your light into this place. Yeah. If for no one else tomorrow, wear a big toothy grin and spread it round. Let's get a real smiley epidemic running. Yeah. Yeah. In the UK, they're planning on some swine flu. I'll translate that. That's a lot of swines who've come up with another idea to create a flu and more money.
Matt.
With that,
thank you.
Matt.
Steps away from the microphone. We're out of here. See you in 2 weeks' time with chapter 2. Bye-bye.